Hey guys, it's me, it's Queen Auset-Heru, and thank you for joining me for today's edition of The Witch Trials. so, I first and foremost want to thank you as my patrons for being patrons, number one, and for watching The Witch Trials, number two. It is extremely helpful to me for you guys to be patrons and support the channel. So I'm eternally grateful. Now, today, on this version of the Witch Trials, I am going to put on trial the movie Hocus Pocus from 1993. And we're doing this movie. It's a Disney movie. It's geared towards a younger audience. And it's a comedy. And we're doing this movie because one of my patrons told me that it's his favorite movie. And I like this movie a lot. This movie plays every Halloween, so many of you probably have seen this movie. But as you're getting ready to see, this movie is extremely problematic. I love this movie though. Like, if I had to rate this movie on how much I like it, because I like it because it's entertaining and it's fun and it's cute and it's heartwarming. But as far as witchcraft accuracy, there is very little. You're about to find out. The accuracy is awful. It's all Hollywood. It's all fairy tales, all make-believe. There's very little except for what I pulled out that's actually legitimately witchcraft. So let's go further in this. The first thing I'm going to do is give you a basic summary of the movie. And then I'm going to tell you the virtues and the vices. I'll probably do the vices first. Let's start with the title. The title of the movie is called Hocus Pocus. And Hocus Pocus refers to two different things. Now, this is an old term. It goes all the way back to at least the 1600s. And when they were using it back then, it was to refer to a person who does magic tricks or juggling. Or in a verb form, it meant the act of doing magic tricks or juggling. So when it was first being used, it was being used for people who were not even doing witchcraft. It just became one with witchcraft because people had a hard time differentiating these two groups, and they still do, from each other. People who do magic tricks are entertainers, and people who do witchcraft are doing a form of spirituality. They're two different things. And I can't do magic tricks. That would be kind of fun, but I can't do magic tricks. And most people who do magic tricks probably can't do what I do. So we're two different groups, but we're both smashed together because of the one word magic. When they do magic tricks, they are basically just doing illusions. And when witches use magic, we're talking about energy. We're talking about the supernatural energy. So we're not making up illusions or smoke and mirrors and, throwing down, big balls of smoke and things like that. Unless you're, the kind of witch who is doing it for profit and you really don't know what you're doing. You do have those kinds of people who are just scammers. We've had scammers since the beginning of time, and they would pretend to know paganism, and all they really were doing was illusions. So that's how these two groups frequently got, interchanged and overlapped. But they're not the same at all. So that's where Hocus Pocus comes from. So if somebody says they're doing Hocus Pocus, it means that they're really just doing some illusion. They're doing some tricks. So it's really not the best name for a movie about witches. But so the whole premise, the whole title is based on issues that went down in the past. And as you're going to see, Disney always uses things from the past, which I like. I like them using old fairy tales and things like that. But as you're going to see in this, it really makes this movie, like I said, fake. All right, so let's talk about the vices. Oh no, first I'm gonna give you a summary, then I'll tell you the vices. Well, the summary is this. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a movie about three witches, very comical witches. They're always hitting each other and smacking each other, real comical. One sister is the head witch. She's the dominant. Her name is Winifred. And then there's Mary and Sarah. Mary and Sarah are like her minions, her little sisters, her little minions. They're called the Saracen sisters. And this movie is about them. Basically, they kidnap little kids and they steal their energy. And one night they steal a little girl and her brother comes to find her. And it's this whole big adventure. They end up getting hung at the stake and they put a curse on this town. And they do a spell that they'll be able to come back one day, So, of course, somebody stumbles across it 300 years later and they come back to life. So it's really cute. And, you see these characters in it because when they come back 300 years later, there's a brother and a sister, of course. And the other brother from the past is still alive because they put an immortality spell on him and turned him into a cat. So he's still alive and waiting to kill them. So he wants revenge. I mean, it's really cool. And by the end of it, everything is resolved and, Disney's made you cry a little bit and everything is everything. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the vices. Vice 1, kidnapping kids. Witches do not kidnap children. Now, way back in the day when this particular stereotype was given birth to, it was in the early times, way back, because paganism goes way back, to the very beginning of time. So one of the reasons how come witches would get accused of stealing or killing children is because a lot of women who were accused of witchcraft, many of whom were not even witches, were midwives. So if a baby died or something happened to the baby shortly after birth, they would blame the midwife and be like, oh, she's a witch. So she's come and stole the baby's soul, and that's where these kind of superstitions came from. Most of these women probably never did anything to these babies. They probably just died of SIDS or natural causes. But back in the day, there was no medical explanation. So it was the midwife is a witch. So we've never been kidnapping kids and sucking their souls out of them or nothing like that. So that's an old vice from back in the day. That is a lie told on poor witches. Number 2, the spell book is not alive. Their spell book was alive. It was like a being, an entity of some kind. And the spell book moved on its own. It had an eyeball on it, and it was alive, literally like a human, like a cat or something. It was alive. And the spell books are not alive. Our spell books, our book of shadows, the things that we use, we do have holy books. And one of our books that most of us have is a spell book, and we write our spells in it. But it's not alive, it's just a journal. Okay? Or a 3-ring, binder or something like that. It's not alive and made out of skin. Like this one was made out of human skin or something. And typically that's not the case. They're made out of leather. Now they're made out of pleather in a lot of cases, or they're made out of like wood or paper or something like that. But it's definitely not alive and going to, be a sentient being. Moving the pages without touching. She can move the pages of her book without touching it, just by going like that with her fingers. Ain't nothing happening. Even if you have telekinesis, the chances aren't high you're going to be able to move something that fast and that heavy. I've seen people move things with their mind, in these like kind of like experiments and things like that, but it usually wasn't anything like that. Using body parts in spells. They had like rotten like body parts in the crib, using them for spells, and I was just like, ooh. Now I understand that back in the day sometimes this kind of thing may have occurred, because I was reading something once where they were using they were using like a skull, like, to do a particular spell, and it was like an ancient spell from back in the day that nobody I've ever heard of doing now. But it still was a bone. It wasn't like flesh, because like the stuff they had was like they had just cut somebody's fingers off or something. And some of the herbs that we use have names that are like witch's fingers, or dead man's fingers, or things like that, but they're really just herbs that have those messed up names. Use of electricity from hands. Winifred can make electricity come out of her hand. We cannot do that. If I could make electricity come out of my hand, boy, I would love it. We do put our hands like over things and use the energy from our hands. So that part is true, but it's not like you can shoot electricity out of your hands and like make somebody tap dance, That's the kind of thing she was doing. And it was just like, nah, that's really exaggerated. Inhaling the child's essence to be young again. They did a spell where they could inhale the child's essence. The child had to drink something, and they could inhale their essence and be young women again, and the child would just die. Is no spell that I know of or ever heard of in any time period that could do something like that. That's something that somebody who wants to stay young must have thought of. The spell book could fly on its own. Remember I said it was alive and it was a sentient being? It could also fly. Ain't nothing happening. They turned a little boy into a cat with a spell. Never seen anybody turn somebody into an inanimate object or an animal or something like that. So that's definitely a vice. Lighting a candle raised the dead. They had a spell, and all you had to do was light the candle, and the Sanderson sisters could come back to life. And I was like, if that was the case, I'm telling you, nobody would be dead. If witches knew how to do that, I mean, I could sell that. I could sell that spell and be, richer than Oprah right now. There's no way in God's green earth if we could do that we wouldn't do it and make oogobs of money. That's just, wishful thinking. It's not going to happen. Candles and fire lighting on its own. They were able to make the candles and the fire light from a distance. And again, exaggerated. You're not going to be able to do that. The talking cat. They had a cat, and the cat was actually the little boy, and he could talk. I've never seen a talking cat in witchcraft. I've seen many witches and wizards, whatever you want to call them, whatever they call themselves, priestesses. I've seen many of us shamans with animals, with cats, birds, dogs, all kind of animals. People have all kind of animals they call their familiars, and the familiar is like your pet. And some people say that you can put your soul into the pet. Now, I think that's another one of these, old wives' tales, because again, I've never seen that in real paganism. But many of us do have a pet, and a lot of us have a cat. Cats are very popular, very common, but they don't talk. And they're not little boys from the 1600s. Hallowed ground is sacred. Hallowed ground is blessed ground. So it's ground that a priest or some kind of a holy person, a shaman, a priestess, a priest has blessed. And they're saying that witches cannot walk on hallowed ground. And that's not true. Even a witch who was a dark witch would probably be able to walk on hallowed ground. Those kind of things, people think that, sacred Christian items harm a witch or deter a witch. And honestly, it really doesn't. The ground being blessed would be more so effective with spirits than anything else. Immortality curse. She puts an immortality curse on the cat. So she turns him into a cat, and he can never die. So he gets hit by a car, he's not really dead. Anything that happens to him, he eventually wakes back up. Again, if somebody could do an immortality curse, trust me, a lot of people would pay for it. Witches flying on brooms. Witches have never flown on brooms. Ever. Many of us use brooms in ceremonies, but it's symbolic. We don't actually fly on the broom. What happens is that before the ritual starts, You are to clean the space and create a space for your altar. And some people, after actually cleaning it and preparing it before they put up their circle, they will take a broom and symbolically sweep away negative energy. Okay, some people also believe, and it's other traditions too, but some people also believe if you hang a broomstick somewhere in the house, you'll have good luck. So there's a lot of different old wives' tales that go along with this, and some of them are pagan inspired, and some of them are just folk tales. So we never did ride the brooms, but some of us do use them during ritual. Spells to raise the dead. I mentioned this earlier. You cannot do, it was the candle to raise the dead. You can't do any kind of spell, a candle, any kind of spell that's going to raise the dead, and them be like coherent and able to talk and that kind of thing. I've heard old stories about raising the dead and they're zombies. When they come back, they're zombies. I've never been able to confirm this or deny it, but I have read stories about that. But they're nothing like their normal self according to the stories when they come back. And these stories are from Jamaica, so I haven't been able to really confirm them. But as far as the Europe is concerned, or the United States, I haven't heard anything about it at all. The devil is their master, and they have sold their soul to the devil. In the movie, they see this man dressed up for Halloween as the devil, and they're like, "Master, master," And the little girl later on says they've sold their soul. But the truth is that we don't have a devil in paganism. There is no devil. The devil is Christian. That's a Christian fiction. That's Christians that made that up. I don't know where they got it from, but that's Christian. That's not pagan. So we don't worship the devil. He is not my master. I don't have him on speed dial. He don't have a copy of my soul in his drawer. We don't have a devil. We believe there's evil energy. We believe that there can be entities that are evil, but the devil or Satan is a Christian. I don't even know what to call it. It's something they came up with. It's something they believe in. It's something they came up with. It's not ours. And the last one was they were using songs to bewitch people. So they could sing a song and everybody would be bewitched. And this is not going to happen. You can bewitch people. Usually you do it with some kind of herb, not typically with a song. Because, like, for example, if you want to bewitch someone and you give them something to drink, like a potion, you could bewitch them. They might even hallucinate or whatever the case is. And it's going to wear off after a while, but it could work if you do the potion right. Likewise, another thing that can happen when you want to bewitch is you can burn something. There's certain herbs that you can burn that will bewitch a person. When I first started doing magic, I was in my classroom and I was burning some of these herbs, because remember, I'm not supposed to be doing witchcraft at work, but I had just learned, and we were always by ourselves after school. So I was learning stuff. I was teaching myself stuff, reading stuff. I was doing me. And one time I was in the classroom and I had burned these herbs, and whatever it was put me to sleep. So the next day, and I used to burn things in the classroom like incense when the kids were there. So the kids didn't know what I was doing, and I was burning incense. I was burning these herbs actually, and they all fell asleep. Totally bewitched, knocked out. And I was like, oh shit, kids just like, uh-oh, and I let them sleep, and then eventually I woke them all up one by one. So that's a way you could bewitch somebody, with herbs or with smoke, but you're not just going to sing a pretty song and they come running like the Pied Piper. That doesn't work. Now, what did I like about this movie? Because I like this movie. I like this movie a lot. I like the witches were conjuring in the woods. A lot of witches did live separately from the rest of the community. In a lot of these stories that you hear, and even in real life. A lot of witches are like me. They're kind of like, more like loners. So that is very true. Even back We still conjure in the woods. We still dance in the woods naked sometimes. We still do rituals in the woods. Not everybody, not all the time, but it does happen. Witches living alone in the woods. So they're conjuring and living alone in the woods. Those things do happen. The outfits, they had on these capes and dresses, and we do wear outfits like that to certain formal ceremonies. Sometimes it depends on the coven, it depends on the group of people, it depends on the tradition. Because remember, witchcraft comes from many different traditions, it's not just one. So it depends. Some people do wear fancy outfits to their rituals. Some people don't wear anything. Some people wear African garb. Everybody's different in what their attire is going to be. Herbs and potion bottles. You can see herbs, potion bottles, and candles all over the Sanderson sisters' home. And those are really used. We do use herbs, we do use potions, we do make potions, and we do use a lot of candles. I don't think they had too many candles because in the first scene they were living in the ancient times when there was no electricity, so they would have even more candles in that case. The spell book and rhyming spells. Even though the spell book is not alive, we do use, like I said before, spell books. And many of our spells rhyme. I love a good rhyming spell. So that's very, very true. Cauldron. They had this big ass cauldron. And I do have a cauldron, but it's not that big. And I do use it all the time. But theirs was humongous. But back in the day, if you were doing witchcraft, you probably were using a cauldron that big. Because remember, back then, pagans were using their kitchen to do their witchcraft. So they probably did have a big cauldron, a huge pot to feed their family. And when they were done eating soup or whatever they had made in it, they probably did do their witchcraft in the same big cauldron. Then they were like spitting in the cauldron. You know, like one of the ingredients was their spit. We do use saliva. I've never seen somebody walk up and spit in the cauldron like that. We generally don't do it that way. But I have seen people use saliva, blood, breast milk, vaginal secretions, semen, all kind of things, hair, fingernails, all kind of things like that can be used depending upon what the spell is. It's usually used from a live person though. Usually you as the witch would prick yourself or something like that, or spit yourself. But we usually don't spit in the coffin. In the cauldron. You could do it that way, but that's not usually the way that we do it. We usually have it on something like tissue or something like that. I've never seen somebody just walk up and spit, and I guess you could, theoretically speaking. I just never saw that. They were hung in 1693 for witchcraft in Salem, and later on they're burned in an oven in 1993. And those are two punishments that did come with the crime of witchcraft. So in different time periods, and even today in some places, you can be murdered for being a witch. So those are definitely true. 1693 is when it supposedly happened, and I think that was around the time period when it was going on in Salem. Witches put a curse on the townsfolk before they were hung. Many people who were accused of witchcraft would, yell, like some kind of like obscenities at the crowd when they were being hung. And very few of the women and men who were hung were actually witches, but they would scream at them something, or I damn this place or something like that, to hell or something like that. But many of them weren't really witches. They were just angry that they were being killed for something that they didn't even do. Most of the people who were murdered for witchcraft were not witches. And that's the messed up part. When you read about the Salem witch trials or the European witch trials or any of them, a great deal of those people were innocent. And that's what's really messed up about it. I love the kids trick-or-treating. I thought that was so cute in their cute little costumes. I love the Sanderson sisters. They did a superb job acting. I love they did perfect. The way that they got along, their chemistry, their acting was great. The Halloween party was lit. There's a Halloween party in this, and it's lit. I love Sarah Jessica Parker singing. I don't know if that was really her singing, but it was so cute. I loved it. And I love the ending. At the end, the brother risked his life to save his sister, and the other brother found his sister again. And I thought that was really sweet. And of course, this is Disney, so they're gonna do a sweet little ending. But I thought that was really sweet because you don't see too many brothers and sisters, especially that little, giving each other love. So I thought it was really sweet. So this movie had 17 vices, more vices than any other movie I've ever reviewed. It only had 16 virtues and 17 vices. So this movie is awful. It gets an F. I have to give it an F. I feel bad about giving it an F, but I have to fail it because this movie is mostly Hollywood garbage. Or garbage from the old ages, lies that Christians told on pagans, all of it goes back. But like I said, that's what Disney does. Disney uses history to tell these modernized stories. So even though I failed the movie horribly, this is a good movie. It's a cute movie. It's an adorable movie. It's really sweet. But you have to watch this movie under common sense as your lens. You have to watch it knowing that this is not real. And a lot of people, when they watch a movie like this, think that's how it is. And the truth is that it's not. This is all based on gossip. It's all based on hearsay. And like I said, people who really weren't even guilty. When I was talking about how the witches weren't really witches that were mostly murdered during the witch trials, they were mostly midwives, and they were women. They were women who people didn't like. For example, the one girl in one of the stories, the real true stories, one young lady accused he wasn't her husband, he was the other lady's husband. So he was married to a woman named Elizabeth, and he had a mistress, a young girl. And the young girl accused Elizabeth of witchcraft so she could have her husband. Sometimes it happened because somebody wanted your land and then accuse you of witchcraft. And there's no way of proving that you're not a witch. That's why the witch trials eventually ended, because there was no way to prove if a person was or was not a witch. Now, they had all these different ways to prove it, but they were all bullshit. Like, for example, if they had one thing where they would drown you. They would take your body with rocks and drown you, okay? And if you floated up or didn't drown, then you're obviously a witch. But that means if you died, you're not a witch. So you just killed this person for no reason, and most of them did die. So my point is that a lot of times it was just people trying to get back at each other, or trying to steal somebody's husband or somebody's wife even, or somebody's lands, or a midwife jealous of another midwife, So a lot of these things that happened were all bullshit. So this movie plays off of a lot of that old bullshit, and I can't in good conscience not point that out because it's based on oppression and stereotypes that have gone on for centuries. So I'm on one hand, I love the movie. I think it's cute and Disney did a great job. But on another hand, I think it's a disservice to pagans from time immortal. So if you're going to watch the movie, enjoy it as a fiction, like I do. Enjoy it as a fiction, but remember, people died because of these stereotypes. People are still dying. There are still countries where witchcraft is punishable by death or something similar. Maybe not, I think some of them are punishable by death. Some of them might be punishable by like fine or something like that. And I guess death is worse than a fine, but still, some countries, because of these old stereotypes, you can still be murdered because of your pagan beliefs. And the things they're murdering you for is that they think you're doing this kind of crazy stuff. Okay? All right. I hope you like this. Thank you so much for being my patrons. You are very, very much appreciated. So come back next week because I'll have another one for you. Mwah. Thank you.